Firstly, thanks again to David for taking us through all of that. The purpose of this stage as well is also clarifications as well as questions. What they've taken you through is also quite a lot of information. So if you simply want to just explore a little bit more about what will be happening and what are the options, we can move the presentation backwards and forwards to do that as well. We've got two people with roving mics, so you can just assume your positions. What we're looking for, so if what I can ask for, if people would focus on either clarifications of what they've seen, just so they can explore how it might affect part of the route where you might live, or whether you've got any ideas on which of the options 1 to 6 might be likely. So, first show of hands, please. Okay.
Thank you. I'm a driver. I've been driving that road for about 30 years, and a cyclist. I've been cycling for about a year and a half. So I've been looking at your pros and cons there, but really it's about how it's going to impact me that's important. That's just my view. So I have to weigh up the cons, which are like the frustration of driving, of having slowed down on that route, which my common sense is telling me. Sorry, common sense is telling me that it's going to be slower and you're going to be stuck behind buses, and I've had some experience of that. So I'm encouraged by the data that you've got there. And I did hear someone saying about some of the monitoring data, or I don't believe it. I don't know. I mean, I can look further into the data. I don't really see why you'd be motivated to lie to us about this data. But maybe you can talk about your motivations. So there's some cons for me as a driver, which I perceive and which may or may not be borne out by the facts. As a cyclist, I'd say it's really the pros that affect me. So I've got a cheat. I've got an electric assist bike, because otherwise I'd be too lazy to cycle 10 miles to work. But when the weather's good, I've used, in fact it was before that Bears Way was made that I was cycling, and then I saw it being built and I started using it, and I really like it. It makes me feel good as a cyclist, and it encourages me to cycle more than use my car. And when I come to retire as soon as I possibly can, I'm hoping that I'll be using my bike a lot more. So I think, personally, I feel weighing up the cons of frustration, because the road's changed and I've had some freedom taken away from me, against the pros of as a cyclist, and it actually has encouraged me and enabled me to do that. I'm actually personally in favour of, which was what you were asking, I think number 4, I think that would suit me best.
Which section were you looking at? Option 4 for the whole route? Or?
Oh, option 4 for the whole route. But obviously it's give and take with the road users. I would say there's got to be a balance here, but personally my balance is in favour of the cycling. But because I can still drive okay, but it's like that.
Thank you. We'll try and be geographically even as we can tonight, so take this lady the road there.
The reason that I came to this meeting tonight and got a bit motivated to support cycling more is because a couple of weeks ago my son was nearly killed on his bike, and a taxi driver crashed into him. He managed to leap to his safety onto the pavement, and the bike was completely crushed. So my main concern is safety, and I think if Eastern Bartonshire don't do something to support safe cycling, then cyclists of Eastern Bartonshire will be killed. So my question is, which is the safest option of these?
Well, just from your perspective, while you've still got the microphone, which of the options jumped out for you?
4, yeah.
Option
separated, 4. Curved, just similar to the
Okay.
first route.
It's just an initial reaction at this point, because obviously there's a lot more detail to go over, but it's just good to get a first feel for that. Okay, thank you.
Hello? Yeah, I've got quite a number of points here. The first one is that any assessment should be objective. This is far from objective. You're talking cyclists. You're forgetting about the public transport, commercial vehicles, car users, pedestrians. What percentage of the users of cyclists? You say 1,000 cyclists a week. Many cars, vans, etc., are using it hourly during the peaks. We're probably talking about 1% of all use of cyclists. And we're going to do all this for 1%. Another thing is that you're doing an assessment here. Is this assessment done in accordance with the MRB? Are you doing a stage 1, stage 2 assessment under the MRB? Which is
Okay.
the normal way of do these things?
Thanks for your question. We'll answer the first part first.
I've got quite a few questions.
Thank you for your question. Yes, we're looking at the route corridor as a whole for all users, which is why we are taking a lot of time looking at the existing issues.
You're not mentioning the traffic volumes,
Yes, they have.
congestion, delays, pollution from stationary vehicles.
There's no
Coming
stationary
times,
vehicles.
road space being reduced. All these are a negative factor.
Yeah, but they
impacting
stop at
on
the
other
stops
users.
anyway.
And which is why we've looked at the traffic modelling at this stage rather than leaving it till later in the process.
Traffic modelling, are you going to use paramedics? Because that's going to be a very good thing. It'll show you traffic going nowhere, sitting in queues.
Well, actually, what we've done is full traffic modelling. We've had a consultant look at it in detail at a lot of different options, and we've taken into account all the development on the route. We've also taken into account development that's within the local development plan that will not yet be committed because there's no developer in place. And we've also looked at development that's out with the key corridor but will feed down onto that key corridor. So we've used all those figures so that we do have a robust figure to look at so that we know what sort of vehicles may be using that route. And you are right, there is congestion on the route, which is one of the reasons why we are looking at encouraging people by not taking the private car, and why we're looking at high quality infrastructure in the first instance, because unless we provide options for people, they won't ever have the opportunity to make a decision and to go travel in a different sustainable way. And as we see more developments come online with families, families are wanting to cycle, and as this lady said, people want to cycle in a safe way, and safety is one of the key issues that's been raised time and time again by people, but all people, not just cyclists, by pedestrians, by car users. When you've got cyclists on the route, there is a conflict. There's a conflict for buses, there's a conflict for private cars. By having a lane, you remove that conflict, and you remove it for drivers as well as for cyclists, because you're not having to overtake maybe 2 cyclists abreast. You've got an opportunity for people to be in their own place on the road.
Yeah, I appreciate this. You mentioned there that you did a road safety audit. How did that road safety audit? There's two areas where you have to cross the road to go into the cycleway and cross back. Where's the safety in that?
Whereabouts are we on this route?
When you're heading north, you have to join it, go to the east side, and go along the west side.
Plastic light.
That's something with the parking.
So the road safety audit was 3-stage road safety audit was carried out. Everything arising from that has been addressed, and that's available on the Players Way
So it's
website.
safer for cyclists to cross 2 lanes of traffic to go to the other side of the...
The long-term
There's a
solution
traffic
to
light.
that
So you only have
is
to cross
extend
one lane
it,
at the moment.
and make it more
Where's
functional.
where
So
the
at the
traffic
moment,
light is?
only doing phase
Oh,
one
that
doesn't
makes
make
sense.
sense because it doesn't connect anywhere. The whole route has to be done to make it connect to local destinations and provide a safe route for people. Because the main things that deter people from cycling at the moment on that route are, say, as the junction, or Clare Junction, cycling through Hillfoot. They're quite scary places to cycle through if you're a less confident cyclist. So if you address them, you can improve the access at Kensington as it signals. So then once you're on it all the way up. And then extending it potentially to Mulcahy in the future, you're on all the way up to Mulcahy. So it's about providing a protected space for people to cycle from Mulcahy to Glasgow if they choose to do so.
Back to
One more point. If there's more time at the end, I'll come back to you. I promise. I do promise. Okay, we'll go to one of those 2 gentlemen on that side.
Good evening. Thanks very much for your presentation tonight. It was good to actually be able to hear what was going on tonight,
Yeah.
unlike the last time we were here. I have a few questions for you. I'll be very, very quick. Prior to the Bears Way being put in place, do we know how many cyclists used Mulcahy Road? Do we know how many cars used Mulcahy Road prior to the Bears Way being put in place? There's been a great emphasis placed on the 1,000 journeys that are used by cyclists, and if we equate that out, it's probably about 85 cyclists, commuting cyclists, going in and coming back from Glasgow. My son-in-law cycles in and he cycles back, that's 2 journeys, that's 10 journeys a week, So that's how your 1,000 journeys actually gets made up in the car alone. Together with a number of cyclists who will use it for leisure weekends and use it at night time as well. A cycle lane is a great idea. I think there's missed opportunities. You've gone on about how it's to make us healthier, wealthier, safer, greener and all the rest of it, Scottish Government. If we look at the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation, Eastern Barnshire is one of the healthiest places to live, and that's a fact. Cycling isn't the only form of keeping yourself healthy. I probably do about 60 miles a week myself on my legs without getting on a bike. So if I was to go on a bike as well, I would have no energy left at all. Off-road cycle routes would be a benefit in the area.
No, people wouldn't use it.
I don't understand why there's so much emphasis placed on Mulgai Road. We have all the schools in the area. We're trying to encourage young people to get on bikes. Why have we not got cycle routes either on or off-road, going from the estates all around Mulgai and Bearsden, rather than somebody's pet project to have a commuter route in through Mulgai Road, the only real arterial route in and out of Glasgow, causing all that congestion.
That's exactly how you do
I would like a survey now done on Bearsden Cross. I know a lot of people now that use Drimmen Road rather than going to Mulgai Road because it's easier and it's quicker for them than using that road as it is now.
It's quiet.
Just before, you've got some good points at the beginning, so there's a clarification around the figures. On the options that you've seen tonight, which ones are working for you?
Well, you put up a number of cons there, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I think some of the cons that you haven't put on, obviously the impact, I don't live in that area down there, obviously live in Mulgai, but I think some of the impact that you might have that you've not put your cons on there, if you displace the parking that's there just now, you will displace it into the surrounding streets. You made some comments last week about putting in parking restrictions. That will have effect on people's houses, because I wouldn't buy a house in an area where there's parking restrictions been put in place.
Okay. What I'd like to do is just pause there for a moment and invite some responses back from the panel.
Thank you for your comments. There was a number there, so I'll hopefully have caught them all. I'll start with the first one about the traffic counts and the cycle counts. We carried out cycle counts prior to the work carried out, and there were very few, so we went out a few occasions to try and get the numbers, and it's coming in at less than 1% of all route traffic was by cycling. And now we're finding that we're closer to the national average, which is still low, because the national average is low, but we would be looking that by putting in infrastructure that would increase. The vehicles, we do vehicle counts annually, so we will be able to check that and track that. And actually, in the most recent years, the number of vehicles has gone down, because since the recession, people are actually either have gone down with vehicles, and that's a trend that's seen throughout Scotland, with the number of vehicles going down. And if I look at so it's got 18,000 vehicle trips per day, car trips per day. The 1,000 trips, you're right, the 1,000 trips are the number of trips, but that's 1,000 trips that's not by car. So though that's one person journeying, that's one person that's chosen to go by bike rather than by private car. And as we said before, this is only partially complete. So should the lane extend, we would hope to see that number increase.
Sorry, you're making an assumption there. Like I said, my son-in-law cycles in and out. Because of where he works in Glasgow, he would not take a car. He cannot say that you've removed 1,000 cars by putting the Bearsway in, because he would travel by train, because he would have to travel by train. So of the 90 or so cyclists that are using it on a regular basis, because we have to assume that most of the time it's probably the same cyclists that are using it. Sorry? It is an assumption, it is an assumption, but we don't have all the facts, do we? We're not all. Am I being taped tonight?
Of course you are.
Oh, good. What I would say is that we can't say that 1,000 cars are off-road. You just can't say that, because we don't know for a fact. Because not everybody who's cycling would use a car.
No, you're right, that is an assumption, but it's an assumption we look at trips when we do modelling. So we look at vehicle trips or pedestrian trips or cycling trips, and it's a way to measure. So unless we questioned every single one of those cyclists and asked how they travelled before, that's difficult to know. But we do carry out stop checks, and we have carried out those surveys to find out how people have travelled in the past and have travelled before. But it's not completely robust, because we can't possibly ask absolutely every single cyclist or every single car driver using the route. Now, if I can go back to your healthier point,
Yep.
Yes, you're right. There's a request for, off-road cycling has its place as well, especially for leisure and for family cycling. And within the active travel strategy that was adopted by Council recently, we do look at what off-street and on-street can be provided and what the benefits of those are for walking and for cycling. But the 81 is a direct route, it's a desire line. People want to cycle it. You've got cyclists on it already, and that's where people want to go. And by taking people off-road and off-route, you're not taking people the most direct point A to B. So just as you would in a car want to drive the most direct route, A to B. Cyclists, walkers, people using buses are the same. They want to get to their place, wherever their destination is, as quickly and as easily as possible. And you had a further comment about the parking strategy, yes. So we are aware that there is a displacement issue there. Parking's at high demand in the area, and there is conflict between people wanting to use businesses, residents, commuters, and we would work with the residents there and the businesses to look at what proposals would be right for different roads. It could be that you're looking at controlled parking zones, which means that that's not a restriction, but it means that you can't be blocking people's driveways. So it ensures people are parking in a considerate manner. So what's right for one road might be different for another road, but we would get to that point together through consultation and through detailed design.
Well, my point about the off-road and on-road cycling was the fact that the cycle routes going from all the estates in the area would be better for young children going back to school. And the A81 is a road which is a commuter route which will not get people out of their cars. We're talking about reducing the 5-minute journeys. That will not happen with the A81 down there.
Try in the middle. One or two answers. I'm just asking, is everyone okay temperature-wise in here? Just wondering yeah?
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the chance. Tried to get a try last week. I think there should be an option 8, by the way, which is to deal with the parking issues and to deal with the no right turn issues and so on, without actually doing anything for bicycles. You need an option 8.
Just ask which option 8 in which section?
You've outlined 7 options. There's an option 8, which is no cycleway, but deals with the other issues, the parking issues, the turn issues, and safety issues.
So your point would be an option 8 just dealing with
absolutely.
vehicles?
Because I accept what the point was made last week, that do nothing is not an option. Okay. Anyway, what I really want to talk about is the capacity of the road, and in effect, I've got a particular interest in traffic modelling. In a 40-year professional career, most of that time I was responsible for traffic modelling or transport policy planning. So I've got a particular interest in this aspect and particular knowledge of it. And there are 2 particular differences between phase 1 and phase 2. You've talked about them, but there are 3 traffic signal control junctions on this section. There are no traffic signal control junctions at the moment on the existing phase 1. You've also got fairly large residential frontage on both sides of the road, which means quite a lot of pedestrians are walking along both sides of the road and crossing the road, particularly at the junctions. That's a big difference from phase 1. Now, at the present moment, at each of the junctions on the 81, there are 2 lanes in each way, each direction, north and south on the main road. And these 2 lanes continue through the junction to the other side, right? Now, I know right turners do have an effect on the capacity of the main road, Well, there are ways of dealing with that, and we allow for that in our traffic signal calculations or in our traffic modelling. That's not a problem. The main thing is the 2 lanes are available at the moment for through traffic, and they are used for through traffic. Now, as I understand the proposal, you're talking about having 3 lanes. All the options take away 1 lane of the one existing traffic lane, which leaves you with 3 lanes at each of these junctions. If you think about it, you can't make 2 lanes into one on the side. So if you've got 2 lanes marked on the approach to the junction, you can't have 1 lane. You can only have 1 lane on the other side because you've got 2 lanes opposing you. Which means that's a massive change in the capacity junction. Instead of all the traffic being on 2 lanes spread over 2 lanes, you now have it concentrated in 1 single lane. And that's critical to the capacity junction. And it means that your middle lane, whatever it is you like to call it, is going to be either a right turn lane or that's all it can be. It has to be a dedicated right turn lane. So I find it very hard to believe your assertion that traffic modelling said there's very little difference in the capacity of these junctions. Because my estimate of it is there's a massive change. It's not quite 50% reduction in capacity, but it's getting on for that way. But that's only part of the story, because I've talked about pedestrians walking along, and they have to cross the road. Now, it would be irresponsible and dangerous to invite pedestrians to cross the 81 at the same time as you're inviting cyclists to cross the south along the 81. So you now have to have separate phases for the pedestrians, and the phase for the cyclists, and the cyclists have to have a separate phase for the traffic. So you've now got extra phases of traffic lights. You've increased the delays and reduced the capacity for all road users at that junction. It's massive, and there's a big change there. And in fact, I think you said yourself, you acknowledged that the time available for cyclists with the option would be less than they currently enjoy. If you're cyclists at the present moment on the main road, you can proceed as long as the green light's available for the general traffic. There's a big difference if you're going to be restricted to 12, 15 seconds every cycle as a cyclist going through these lights. Just think about it. It's not good for the cyclist. So,
Why not ask us?
what I might suggest is that the benefit of the audience, because you've got certain expertise, is that we go to one of the junctions that you're talking about, just so you can illustrate it. So, which junction would you pick to try and illustrate this?
Any of them?
Any of them?
Probably Clear Road is the easy one.
Okay. Do you want to?
Yeah, so if you take, for example, Beauclair Junction, so the top one here, you've got 2 northbound lanes south of the junction, which goes into 1 lane directly after the junction. So turning that into a right turn lane into Beauclair Road and a straight ahead lane would be effectively what's happening now. Because what you have now is 2 northbound lanes, one is a right turn, so if that's not blocked with a right turner, you've got 2 northbound lanes that immediately go into 1 lane.
That's quite normal at traffic signals. There's no problem with 2 lanes merging into
What
one
we
after the
found
junction. No, there's no problem. What you have a problem is to get rid of the parking that's immediately beyond the junction. If you took away the parking spaces immediately beyond the junction, it would make that easier. But you also have another problem. If you've got 1 lane, you've got a right turn now into the post office sorting office and into the houses on the right and the golf course. Where's the picture of the right turns going there?
What I'd like to
Every time
ask is
somebody
if
turns
when
right, stop.
just as a general decorum, if we can just invite and give the speaker a chance to finish the question. I'll always make sure I'll come back to you, so we can just do that. Is there any substantive points that get picked up?
Yeah, so with every sort of change to our road scheme, you have to balance out all the road users, and residence parking is one of the things that we have to take quite seriously, because a lot of them residents don't have off-street parking, so the only parking they have is residence parking. But we have the modelling, we've got the reports on it, and we'd be more than happy to share it with you and put it online, so you can see exactly what was considered and how we've come to these solutions or these options that I've talked about before. As far as you said with the cycling journey time, yeah, if you had a segregated option through the junctions, having an extra signal phase for a cycle phase could potentially, as I said, have a negative impact on cycle journey time. So it's a balance between the solutions at the junctions might be different for each junction. So you might have either a two-can crossing, which might work more effectively, but then you have a shared use section to balance that up. But we've looked at it to see if it's possible, and we've got the report, so we'd be happy to share the report with you.
But does their modelling include that effect? And what form did the model take? I'd certainly like to see it more available. You said there's also available.
I think what we're saying is we can make the data available to make that true. We'll take gentleman in the middle here.
Yes, I heard a few people saying, oh, here it comes. First of all, I'd just like to actually ask one of the questions of the audience that I asked last week, which I was quite shocked by the answer. I'd just like to ask, would you actually like to have children the ability to cycle along the A21 safely? Yes. So that was certainly a better answer than last week. There was also, I just wanted to make a point about somebody who spoke last week as well, who was talking about giving 25% of the road up for, I think he said 2.4% of the road users, which actually I think is a significant increase in what it had been previously. I think it was 0.8, so that's a good sign in itself. But ask yourself how much of the landscape that we live in has been adjusted for people with disabilities, for instance, maybe in wheelchairs. And if you look at that, that's 1.9% of the population. And yet we spend a lot of money putting on raised curbs, etc. for that. So, and also we have the stuff on the pavement, which are bumps for people with sight disabilities. And so I think the suggestion, because it's a small percentage just now, is ridiculous. But most importantly, this lane isn't for me or him who's wearing lycra. This lane is not for the people who currently cycle, because we do it just now, despite the conditions. And I can assure you, the conditions on the road before were horrible. These lanes are for people who currently don't cycle, but would love to cycle. They're for the children of this area. They're for the future of Milgai and Bearsden. I don't live here. I said that. I'll admit that. But I think I have a say as I do cycle that lane every single day. You may disagree.
Let's ask you a quick question.
Yes.
Just, really interesting points. Out of the options that you're seeing up so far, what's jumping out of you as a good option?
I'll be honest with you, I am a big proponent of cycle lanes, and I really want to use them. I would not use the shared use at all, because it leads to conflict, it leads to issues at the junctions. And I know if I don't use it, I know a lot of people wouldn't. So if you want to reduce the conflict, put in segregated cycle lanes.
So just ask the question, because it's good to hear both sides. The options are being discussed for someone who uses it or wouldn't use it from that particular user group of cyclists. It's good to have some clarification for everyone else.
Absolutely. And just to add, although I don't live in the area, my son will be going to Bockler Academy next year. And actually, we have the option, if this was extended all the way to Milgai Town Centre, to cycle on the back roads of Baldernach, all the way down into Milgai Town Centre, all the way down to Kensington, and then in. And just, finally, one more point. We're talking about people saying you don't want cycle lanes on the main arterial routes. In fact, every city in the world which has significantly increased its modality share of cycling has started working on what they call the spokes. It's the main transport routes through the city, because that's the routes that people want to use. What you then do is work in the areas round about that, putting in 20 mile an hour, putting in permeable filtered streets as well, and that's what will actually bring a significant change. Thank you very much. That's
I think it is.
Thank you. I think most of us here would have no objection to safer cycling on our streets. But what has happened, the animosity that we saw last week, and there's a bit of anger tonight against phase 2, would have been less if phase 1 hadn't been so disproportionate. Now, it takes up quite a bit of the carriageway, but what has happened on the motorway is we have this pattern of zigzags and islands and bollards, which seems totally unnecessary. And what I object to is the method in which this is being done. We've had this figure of 1,000 cycling journeys a week. That's a number. It's a claim. It's not statistically valid unless it is measured against something else, namely the 17,000 car journeys a day. Now that gives it a bit more proportion. But what we have here is we get the impression that the planners here are sitting over their computers as if they're playing war games, and the motorists are the enemy. We get plenty talk about it's more functional for cyclists. That option is not good because it would increase cycling time. We have the proportions of cyclists to motorists. That is the reality of the thing.
Is there a particular question you'd like to ask?
No, I'd like to make a statement because it's not just questions, it's opinions as well. We're not here to be fed your line all the time. It wouldn't do you any harm to listen now and again. We keep hearing that East Lanarkshire Council is listening. They may listen, but they don't hear. You're talking about points of conflict. Now, most of these points of conflict don't exist at present. You will be creating them.
And are there any particular points that you've seen tonight where conflicts are created?
Your slides, your illustrations are quite dishonest. If you look at all these pictures, we see the Hill Foot one, for example. There is one car there. Now you'd have to go out about 3 in the morning to get that.
No, that's not true. That's exactly what it looked like tonight.
The one with the Hill Foot shot, that one.
That's exactly what it looked like tonight.
What's happened to the rest? There must be a traffic jam.
That's exactly what it looked like.
You want to ban right turns all over the place. In the real world, right turns are part of traffic, the same as left turns and straight ons. They're there because people use them and because people need them. And then finally, with your illustrations, I don't know how many people have looked at the submission to Sustrans on the EDC website. And this is for the bit between the roundabout and St Paul's Church. Now, if you look at that, I think you'll wonder where we are, because it looks not like Milngavie at all. It's very lovely. Nice pastel drawings and trees all over the place, sun shining, 1 or 2 pedestrians.
The sun never shines in
1 or 2 cars.
Get to the point.
Well, the point is that we are being conned, because that design looks more like Brigadoon than Milngavie.
The lady in the blue checked something. What in fashion group? Thank you.
I know you don't like when people point out your failings, but you have let the people of East Lanarkshire down in some respect, because you're concentrating in phase 2, which you're calling phase 2, and it's in the middle of the geography of the route you're talking about. So you've imposed it with very little consultation. I engaged with your officers in December and was not given the information that I asked for, particularly the quality impact assessment that you failed to provide. You provided me with an email list of points that might appear in the quality impact assessment, but you have let yourselves down and you have let the people of this area down, and it isn't fair to continually impose your desires on the public. Right now you've already chosen that you want option 2, 4 or 7. How did that choice come about?
I think that's yeah, we can answer that.
I'm not ready for the answer yet. I'll let you answer it in a minute. But you've already imposed 2, 4 and 7. Do you want to answer that?
Yes, I have. No, as I said during the presentation, no decisions have been made as yet at all. That would be for council to make that decision. This is a discussion about the principle of moving forward onto phase 2. And the reason that we look at 2, 4 and 7 in more detail is because those are the options that would provide the protected cycle lane that is within the sort of the cycle and the Beardsley guidance. There is no decisions being made. The consultation response, so all of your input at these events will be taken in a report to elected members of council for consideration. So we're not at design stage. That would only start to happen if we got approval to proceed. So to reaffirm, no decisions have been made.
What I feel that you tend to do is you tend to take the information that you get from the audience that provides you with very informative and experiential view of the area, and you take it and then you use it to turn it back to fit into your consultation. And I think that's a very unfair way. You really should have had the report of phase 1 ready for this meeting so that that could be presented to the people here before you engage on a consultation of phase 2. I would like you all to remember that you are public servants. This is public money that is being used. Sustainable transport is funded with public money. They have their own agenda, you have your agenda, and it would appear to me that your agenda is very, very muddied. You have a very experienced input from somebody there with a transport background, which to me sounds more informed and experienced than the and I urge you to please start listening to people in this community, because this is my community, this is their community. I'm not so sure if you live in the community, and I do have a question. Do all of you cycle to work? I'd like to have an answer from each. Right. Does it you Zach? You don't. Okay, so you're imposing these health targets on us. Do you? Do you cycle to work?
No, I don't cycle to work, but I live in the area.
Okay, but you don't cycle to work, so you're imposing that. So we're not able to see you cycle past our roads and all the rest of it. Do you cycle to work?
Would they cycle though if there was if it was safe?
You're right. So I'm not just
And do you cycle?
I don't cycle to work because I don't have a facility. No. Cycling, and I will walk, I will cycle, I will get the train, and I will take my car, and it depends what journey I'm doing and what the requirement is. Have I got the kids with me and we're doing a particular trip? Have we got time? We'll walk, we'll get the train, we'll do whatever, because we've got a choice.
Yes.
And that's what we're trying to give people, is the choice to make a decision about what more.
Yeah.
I would like you to revisit the question of, originally what you should have asked the public of this area is, do they want a two-way cycle lane or not?
Can I just say, I'm conscious of time as well, 40 minutes, and I do want to get, my job is simply to get as many questions in. Can I ask people to shorten the questions a little bit and just focus on what we have to comment on? Someone was doing this thing, so the lady in the blue, put it here. No, sorry, the one in front of you.
You're joking! I've had my hand up long to this lady. I'll hand it to this lady right after me. Alright?
It's a deal, it's a deal.
That's a deal. Right, Gail. I think it's Gail, is it? Yes. You said you were interested in safety. Well, that's the whole reason I'm here tonight. Because the front of my house is in Mulgary Road, the side of my house where the driveway is in Kilderland Road. Unfortunately, people that are supposed to be amateur cyclists are going on the pavement, whether it's been allowed by your friend next to you, on the pavement, and they're coming with their hard hats, They were supposed to be amateurs, but their lycra, as the gentleman was talking about, and they come round there, and they give people that are disabled with their dog on the lead a round for having a longish lead. You pull your lead in with your dog. And also, there's been removal vans going over the pavement where there's enough space, because now with the bollards in, they can't do a 3-point turn. So they're having to go straight down the next road to me. Now, I can't remember your name. What's your name again? And remember you came, David, remember you came and you said, people should not be going around the front of my house. Well, I'm trying to do the front of my garden, and people, it's very narrow, and they're standing to try and cross the road, and they're going, beep, beep, excuse me, and I've got that with my bottom trying to tuck it in, and it's not supposed to be allowed to go there. You said yourself, they're not to do that. Now, right outside my house, thank you very much, there's a big drawing of a bike. Now, we're trying to get out our driveway, and the bikes are coming with that, and they're going very, very fast. So, it is just bedlam. Absolute bedlam.
Great,
Okay.
thank you. Just before you talk, I've just been asked to do a request. Can you just hand the microphone to this gentleman?
Sorry to break in. I'm Dr. Cole, and I'm on call with Scottish Ambulance Service going to 999 calls in the area. Also a GP up in Stricklin, but I live in Brisbane. Commute up there. I just want to quickly pick back on the safety points, which is why I'm here tonight, which is that Ian's lovely chat there about some of the safety issues. 81, and I've lived here since I was 8 on and off. 81 has always been a very dangerous road, driven at average speeds of like 6 to 40 miles per hour because of the 4 lanes. So just when Ian was mentioning about the architecture is actually designed to slow you down. And currently, I've spoken to quite a few people at the drop-in events who've said that they're finding it dangerous driving the road. Just to let you know, I'm going to do a wee video and post it, a video with a running commentary on the road. The road is meant to be driven at between 27 and 30 miles per hour. And I'm usually the slowest person on the road when I drive around. People are driving at just too high a speed. So if you're finding it dangerous, just bring that speed down by 5 or 10 miles per hour. Really bring it down. It's quite a jump from the 40 it was before a lot of the time. Bring that right down to that 1 lane. And you'll find as you come into the chicanes are designed to slow you down so you can't go around at much speed. So if you're finding that uncomfortable, that's what they're there for. Now I have to say, my job for the last, since 1992, 93, has been going to fatalities on the road. I've told 2 sets of parents to children that their child was dead. I never, ever want to do that again. I'm going to start crying because I still am traumatized by it. Dead children are absolutely the worst thing a society can have, the absolute worst. So when we talk to the fact there's only a small number of cyclists, we have to say that in actual fact, it's the deaths of those cyclists that's the big issue, because they're very vulnerable and they have a very high rising fatality rate compared to cars, which have all the same conditions.
Will you answer me, please? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. There were a number of issues that you raised there, and being existing issues, we will look at that. But that's where we have discussed tonight is the difference between shared paths and segregated. So if you have a segregated route, you reduce any conflict between pedestrians and cyclists because they're in a segregated area and a segregated lane, and the pedestrians are on the footway. When it is a shared use path,
could I invite you to come, please?
Yes, of course.
Especially first thing in the morning and tea time.
Yes, of
People
course.
are going home.
Yes, and we would
And
definitely
I might
look at
try
that.
and take some videos for you.
Yes,
coming.
Of course, more than happy to do that.
Great, thank you. As promised. Sorry.
Thanks. I'm a motorcyclist and a motorist, and I am very much an amateur cyclist, so I do wear a hard hat, and sometimes, although it may upset certain sections of the society, wear lycra too. One of the things that concerns me, I know we don't want to talk about phase 1 particularly, but I'm interested to know what lessons might be learned from phase 1 moving into phase 2. And one of the things I would like to raise is the issue of access onto the road. Now, this is an issue that I've noticed both as a cyclist wanting to keep myself alive and as a motorist who is frankly frightened of finding myself on the wrong side of the law if I hit a cyclist. So, if I could use the example of the Sports Direct Gym, which is one of the few places where the cycle path is on the west side of the road. Coming out of that access point, it is very difficult to take account of everything that is going on and still see cyclists who are coming up from either direction.
Is it on the slides?
I don't think it's
It's
right
not.
It's right up at the Mowbray roundabout end. So if you're coming out, there's so much going on there. There's a two-way cycle lane, there's a raised curb, there's parking on the other side, there's quite a lot of signage. And as quite a confident driver, I actually find it really difficult to be looking at both sides of the road, cars coming and going from both sides, to be checking both sides of the cycle path, and to see past all the other stuff that is kind of crowding your vision. Now that, as a road user, the last thing I want to do is hit a cyclist. Similarly, as a cyclist, I'm aware that cycling along there, and there are other pinch points as well where I think there are issues, and we want to make sure that's probably a good example. I'm interested to know how you translate these issues, whether you accept there are issues there, and how you plan.
So your key question is what lessons learned from phase one. Just describe yourself as a different category of cyclist and road user. So interesting, what sort of options up there would work best for you? Look at it from both
interestingly, I
perspectives.
don't really concur with the other cyclists who've spoken. I don't particularly like the two-way because there's very little swerve room and there's very little wiggle room, and friend sitting next to us had an issue where he's been riding up the road towards the Old Food Nursery and being confronted by people coming over the brown hill to abreast, and he's looking where to go, and there's a fear. If you're riding, in that example there, if you're the lady in yellow, you're riding into Mogai, but you're riding very, very close to the oncoming traffic, and that's quite unsettling and quite unnerving. My husband also had a situation roughly the same place where a small child accompanied by its parent was coming towards him and wobbled into his path, and again, he had nowhere to go. So I'm not a big fan of the segregated. I prefer the idea of a shared path because I can, as a responsible cyclist, I will move around and go where it's best to steer.
Thank you for describing that, really useful. I'll just answer your question.
Thank you for your comments, and these are the sort of comments that are really useful to take forward to, especially when we get to design stage. When you're ready, if we get to design stage, but when we look at phase one, and there are complex points and it is junctions, and when we will continue to revisit that, and when we receive comments from cyclists or drivers, we will revisit it and we will look at it in more detail. And having heard from you tonight, we as a team will go out looking at see if there's something we can do.
I think, yeah, go on.
Bring the microphone to the front.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I represent a group of visibly impaired people in Kirkintilloch, and I feel that history is repeating itself. We have been campaigning against the shared space in Kirkintilloch for over 2 years, and the council didn't listen to us then, and we are now in a situation under construction in Kirkintilloch where people are frightened to go near the town centre altogether. They are avoiding it. The town is dying on its feet. Other schemes are being U-turned left, right, centre, and the same will happen eventually in Kirkintilloch. It's a complete waste of public money. The same is happening here. I estimate that the council have already made up their mind to go ahead with the scheme, regardless of what your intentions are. Earlier spoke about disabled people, and one or two tonight have mentioned pedestrians. The council have not given any consideration, in my view, to disabled pedestrians. Apparently, I have some members in this area, and apparently they have to cross a cycle lane to get to a bus stop. Yes. We don't have the option of choice as far as going from A to B. We can't use buses anymore. We can't get to the trains. Taxis are the only way we can get around, and that increases our carbon footprint, not reduces it. So nobody, once again, no one has thought about disabled people, particularly blind and elderly people. Haven't given it any thought whatsoever. But this team will go ahead, regardless of what you say.
Thank you for that. Okay, let's go somewhere at the back. Oh, sorry. That side, yes.
Hiya. I've just moved to Eastern Warwickshire, so it's really cool to see public debate happening for something like this. Whether you like it or not, it's a really good thing to have. I'm also pleased to look around and see what I hope I might bring the age demographic down quite a bit as well, which is another good thing for this to happen. A lot of the points today, because these are a lot of the things that we're talking about today are about the future for people that are going to live here for generations. I've got a wee daughter, and I use that, the phase one. It's not great, it's not amazing, but I feel safe taking my wee daughter on that. I don't use it, I'm not a commuter on this route. I've got my own way into town to go to my own work, which I do by bike, and I do that. I'm a confident cyclist, and I go on the roads and all that kind of stuff. In regards to your consultation for this, ideally as a cyclist, a segregated cycleway is the most efficient way for me to get about. However, I think the junctions that you're talking about, I don't want to have your job trying to figure out how to do it safely with the amount of people that are trying to input to this. I think you do have to, whether people are saying that you've already made up your mind, you do have to figure out all the folk, the specialists that are talking and stuff like that. There's a lot more to this than just a few flashy photos that kind of make it look rosy, but it's maybe not all rosy. So my point is, segregated cycleway is probably the best way. Some of the people are talking about different ways for you to cycle through other residential streets. That's perfect, that absolutely totally works. However, people are like water, we want you to get to the one place we want to go to it fastest, and that is primarily down this way. I've lived in Glasgow for the last 6 years, and I use this infrequently. I'll say it's not a frequent journey. I'm not one of the 1,000 people that use this every week, apparently, but I do use this route, and what I have noticed when they built this new phase one, I find it safer, I find it better for me taking my daughter on my bike. However, the junction between there and down to Asda and things is not a fun place to cycle. However, I'm a confident cyclist, and like the lycra-clad people here, they'll cycle regardless, but it's not about them. Yes. It's about the future of my daughter growing up. Do I want this to be here when she's my age? Yes. Or do I want her to be thinking, why did my dad not do anything? Like, why is the car still kicking about here in 30 years?
Back on this side, on the right-hand side. That's an ideal setup as a response, because he's told us what his context is for responding, and how his point of view is, so we can get good feedback.
I want to voice my support for option 4, and I want to talk to my friend over here. Last week somebody here talked about our difficulties with transporting her children around, and I think something that's really important to remember is that we're not asking everyone to cycle. It's not practical for everyone to cycle. But by making cycling safer, more people will cycle. That's a proven fact. That's happened in Europe. We know that happens. But you need to remember as well that when you're in traffic, you are traffic. And if one person takes their bike out onto the road, that's one less car. That's one less car that you're waiting in a queue behind. I feel like the Bears Way is a really important project, and it's a real kind of turning point for Glasgow and safe and infrastructure that we're putting into Glasgow. Yep. And I really want to appeal to people who are opposing this and just maybe ask you to think, look at the wider picture, consider it a little bit of give and take, because we do need to look at the future for our children. If this doesn't go ahead, then other projects won't go ahead. Everybody's looking at us here, and it's really, really important for the future. If it doesn't go ahead, we're just going to see more congestion, more gridlock, and more pollution. And that's what we're going to leave behind in this world for our children. And I really want to appeal to you to think about that.
If we stay at the back, and we'll start once again. There's a gentleman in a yellow t-shirt just to your left. All right.
I think one thing that's becoming very obvious is that the 882 is both practical as it stands. at the moment, it doesn't work for most of the people in this room. One of the things I really like is the segregated system. It keeps all the separate users separate from each other. One thing that we're always talking about is how we're protecting cyclists from cars, how we're protecting cyclists from collisions. Why aren't we protecting motorists from cyclists? Although a cyclist is always going to come off physically worse in any sort of conflict, there's an emotional, physical and economical impact for any collision that takes place. So by separating three streams of traffic, you're going to reduce that significantly across the board. There will be knock-on effect, but surely that affects all users, not just the cyclists.
Just for clarity, are you talking about option 4?
Option 4.
Option 4. Okay.
Segregate everybody, keep them separate.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just like to kind of follow that with pretty much the same points that, well, the problem I think you'll have with the shared space is that you're looking at a commuter route for cyclists into Glasgow. Now, if you're cycling from Mulgai to Glasgow and I do it, you kind of have to get your foot down a bit. You can't really mess about if you want to do it in under an hour. So you're going to be cycling on, potentially, one of these slides, a shared space, 15, 16, 18, 20 miles an hour. That's not going to work. It's just not going to work. People coming out as that, accidents all over the place. So I support option 4 in that respect. And just generally, yeah, I support Bears Way. I didn't used to cycle in, and I now do. I cycle along Bears Way and then I join the Kelvin Walkway, go along the canal and into Glasgow. I don't mind cycling on the road, but I don't choose to. I don't like cycling on the road. I don't like cars flying past me. And as a driver, I don't want stuck behind cyclists. So surely that's win-win for everyone.
Yeah.
I don't want to get stuck behind a cyclist when I'm driving. I don't want to get hit by a car when I'm cycling. So it kind of is a golden opportunity here. It's quite a wide road. You've done phase 1. You've not got much more to go to get to the Kelvin Walkway. And then you've got a nationwide exemplary system.
Hello everybody, my name's Ian. I'm a cyclist, but I'm also a person. I have 2 cars. I live in Mulgai. Believe it or not, I choose to leave my car in the driveway when I can to cycle to work. It doesn't suit me all the time. There are times when I do have to take my car, I will admit it. However, this is the way forward. We can keep going on and building more. Last week there was a suggestion that we should have 2 lanes again going in either way the whole way up the road. So essentially we're going to widen the road again for more cars. We keep building roads and we keep seeing more cars. And what do we keep seeing? No, hang on, let me finish. We keep building roads. Let me finish. We keep building roads. We keep putting more cars on the road, more people, and all we see is more congestion. I, like the gentleman spoke earlier, sorry, I only started cycling 18 months ago. You might not believe me, but 18 months ago, I've lost 2 stone in weight. So there are benefits to it, and I implore the council to keep going with this. And I know there are a lot of folk that are dead against it, and I get it. However, I think we need to keep going with it for the sake of my children, this gentleman's children, and future generations to come.
Congratulations.
Hello. Thanks very much for your presentation. I think the majority of us here are privileged enough to own a car or have access to a car, but there's a lot of people who can't drive, either through health reasons or they're not old enough or they can't afford it. And the road is there for everyone, regardless of whether they walk or whether they get in a car or a bus or how much tax they pay or how old they are. I also think the majority of us are quite privileged to have grown up at a time where the traffic levels, the road traffic levels were half or maybe even a third of the amount that they are now. When it was a lot safer for us to learn to cycle, to go to school by ourselves, to cycle into town, to go around a palace house on our own. And that's what I want for my son. I want him to have the same opportunities that I did, to be able to go about by himself and not feel afraid, not have his life threatened or in danger in any way. That's what we're talking about here. All road users, we just want the same thing, right? We want to get from point A to point B with as little fuss as possible and feel safe. And that's why I thank the council for having a bash at something like this.
Just which option would you prefer?
I would definitely say option 4. That's why I would say option 4, because the segregated cycle lane at the moment, my son's 2 at the moment, and that 1 mile of segregated cycleway is the only place I would take him on the back of my bike, because it's the only place I feel safe doing it. The most precious thing I have in the world on the back of my bike. And I would love to have the massive stretch where we could do more, and then when he's a little bit older, he can do it by himself. So definitely option 4, because that is the longest stretch of segregated cycleway, and also the least shared space, because I don't think shared space, as this gentleman here in the front has said, doesn't work for anyone. Pedestrians don't like it because cyclists wear around it. Cyclists, most of them I know don't use it, they'll just go on the road. So motorists don't like it. So we just need to bite the bullet and do the full segregated option 4. So thanks a lot for your time.
Okay.
This is a very different night.
Sorry. Right at the front there. Yeah.
I'm really sorry to say this, but I'm another cyclist.
I've
been cycling into Glasgow for about 12 years. I go in by the Calvin Cycleway. The part of my journey that I dislike the most is the part in front of Asda and down through Hillfoot, which every day I realize that I'm taking my life in my hands. And I don't necessarily expect to get home, particularly through the new stretch in Hillfoot. Now, I've encountered the council before. I objected to the changes to Hillfoot. I expressed reservations to Phase 1. I have to say my main reservation to Phase 1 was that I thought where the attention was needed was Phase 2. Phase 2 is the most dangerous stretch. It is terribly dangerous right now if you are a cyclist. So the only way for me now to get through that, if I'm going north through Hillfoot, I basically go along and make sure that the cars are really staying behind me. And then I just have to cut across. And every day I do it, I know it may be the last time I ever do it. It is simply not safe. Having built Phase 1, the whole route is unsustainable without doing something about Phase 2. Yeah. Now the question you're going to ask next is, which of the options would I prefer? I would prefer option 4, and the reason is because it is segregated. I go in by the South Kelvin Cycleway as well. Now I like to think of myself as being quite a considerate cyclist. I don't go through red lights. I try not to go on pavements unless I'm supposed to go on pavements. Kelvin Cycleway is shared. Every time I go on it, I am navigating dog walkers, and they have every bit as right to be there as I do, and yet, obviously, I do want to try to get past them. I've learned a little trick, by the way. A dog always follows its nose, and that has helped me to prevent many collisions over the years. There's only one other thing I wanted to say, which is, I also drive. I also take the train. I'm a bit concerned that commuter drivers are being seen as somehow something we need to stop. Actually, in order to help out the transport policy, we need more space for commuter parkers, not less. One of the difficulties I have is if I want to take my car, and I live quite a distance from Millguy Station, if I want to take my car, if I go after 8 o'clock, there is no parking. That's why people are parking in Hillfoot. I've been known to park in Hillfoot myself because it's the next place to try if that's not available. So I hope the council, I would ask if the council is investigating alternatives to actually improving the parking lot facility for those people who do want anything.
I think that is a good thing. Thank you. Yeah.
told we keep missing, so apologies.
Hi, it's a question for Gail. You mentioned the emergency services earlier on. You touched on the basis that you received a response from the fire service. What about the ambulance service? Have you got one from them?
Thanks for your question. We've written twice now to the ambulance, fire and police, and we only got a response from the fire brigade. When we went through the traffic regulation order process, they're statutory consultees, they get the full plans and they have the opportunity to make an objection then. If they do not make an objection, it means that they are comfortable with the plan. So the fact that we have not heard from them when they've been given the opportunity to respond, they asked the question, did they have issues with the new road layout? They did not respond, which means that we take that they do not have issues.
I'd just like to mention that what I heard at the last meeting. Most folk here recall there was a traffic jam that stretched from Arnold Clark's all the way down to Asda.
The roadworks.
The question there is, there was an ambulance guy sitting there and he tried to put his lights on and they couldn't get by and he ended up just shrugging his shoulder. So I think the fact that I haven't heard anything is not quite the answer.
Could you? We can try and make this as quick as possible to get as many in. We've got about 10 minutes.
Sorry, I'm trying to make it quick as possible, but
as best as you can, don't worry.
Yes, well, that's me, guy and I've lived there for 30 years. So I've seen a few changes. One or two traffic lights, 2 feet across, used to be 9 traffic lights through the 81. I've seen it get busier, and I agree that if you widen that road, above your roads, you encourage cars. But by narrowing the roads, you don't discourage the cars, all you do is cause more congestion. I can look out my window now, and while it's helpful it's there, might have been a bit of a bottleneck. It's now a gridlock quite often. That's not a revolution, I wouldn't think. And as for the children, my daughter stays in Hillfoot Drive, which is just the back of the shops at Hillfoot. Grandchildren, 7 months and 3 years, so I'm thinking them as well. And I want them to cycle, but when I was wee, if I was to contact to cycle on the main road, I cycled the back roads. And I still got to where I was going if I didn't just want to cycle. At the moment, most of them actually these journeys, but I think actually up in the pavement. I've always been struck by a bicycle by about 2 feet trying to get into my driveway. What you propose where I am is to take away all the parking. What I want to know is, how does that go? Where can I get deliveries from? If I'm getting bulk deliveries from B&Q, these big crans, how does that get into my property now? You're going to put some sort of cycle in there and completely take it away from me. By all means, reduce speed, but there's a lot of other ways to do it than causing a traffic jam. We certainly want more safety, we want people to be able to cycle safely. When it was a 4-lane, it was much more comfortable going up there, and it was much easier. It was the council who gave fine fair permission to take on Hillfoot School, a big supermarket there, and then a few years later gave ASDA permission to make it bigger, and you see the traffic jam there. We have policemen on there at Christmas because it's that busy to take the traffic out. The council caused a lot of these problems. They've made Hillfoot worse in the last couple of years. It's driving for cyclists on the pavement, so cyclists, if I didn't live in this area, I would want a cyclist. This road, from one boundary to one side to the other, needs to be about 12 to 20 feet wider to actually get a cycle lane there properly. I'm looking at a cycle lane, people are telling me cyclists are scared to use the road. You look at the width of that cycle lane, if it does happen to get popular, they're going to be scared of driving into that.
Then we'll widen it.
Just ask which option you're holding up on.
Each side.
Oh, I just want this option to try and keep the balance.
All right.
Can I ask you something? See the segregated, in what ways it's segregated? Is it a curb? Is there anything that stop the cyclists just moving over?
Phase 1 has a curved edge at the moment. When we look at, and if we look at detailed design, there will be more consultation, and at that point we'll be looking at the detail, what form does that segregation take?
So there's a possibility it's not segregated then, so a cyclist could just move on the pavement and
No.
if there's somebody in a pram or whatever, they could come in and contact
No,
them.
if it was segregated, it would have an element of segregation.
A raised element,
Yes,
of the
physical
surface.
nature. Yes,
Yeah.
we physical movement.
So, as for making deliveries or different things like that are coming out, how's that going to be effective?
Well, we would, that would come up in the detailed design, but we would work with all the residents along here to ensure that there was still access to your properties.
That's it, right, so it probably need to sit across the cycle lane then?
Well, that would pick up in the detailed design. At points in phase one, we've got gaps, which allows people access. So we would have to look at each location individually, look at what the issues were there, what were the requirements, because we would, of course, have to think about people getting deliveries, you know, and that is, and accessing the property.
Who would be who was the priority? See, if I'm coming from Glasgow and making to turn right into my property and there's a cyclist coming in opposite direction, the cycle lane, who has priority?
The cyclists, because they're on the carriageway and they should be treated as a vehicle.
So straight away, as soon as I stop, the council will move the traffic lights from out of the road there. I hold the traffic light all the time, so I've got to wait for cyclists and I gap the traffic. And there's very few gaps of traffic now since it went from 4 lanes to 2.
Well, you would treat the cyclist as a vehicle, so it would be the same as waiting for a car to pass in front of you, or a cyclist to pass in front of you.
That's creating more congestion again then. I'm holding everybody up, I'm conscious of it now, so I'm looking for a gap coming to try and get in quick, and there's no chance of me having a problem. My wife already had somebody run into the back of there, a good number of years ago, of course, but wait to turn right. So it's dangerous. I'm only in this house because the previous person was killed in the zebra crossing there. So I know it's dangerous. So we do want to reduce speed, but this is not the answer. Cycle is not the answer.
Okay, let's go to someone in the middle. Gentleman waving at me over there.
I'd just like to thank you all at the top table tonight, because I was at the previous meeting, which quite frankly was catastrophic. I think school children could have run a meeting in a better manner. It was a substantial improvement. Having said that, because it's near the end of the meeting, I would like to say that there seems to be a great deal of concern for the cycles, and we're all interested in the cycles. We've all got children, we've all got grandchildren. But we have to face the fact that the car's not going to go away. The road, to start with, was a natural place for the council to start their cycleway example, in my opinion. It was broad, it was straight. But what they have given us is a reduction and more difficult conditions for the road motorists. And everybody here has suffered by it. And that is why there is a great anger and upset about the whole situation. And the council really will have to think also about the motorists as well as the cyclists. The two go together. I did have a motorbike for 3 years when I was an apprentice, so I know what it's like to drive amongst traffic. There is a great deal of problems, and motorists are the worst as far as people on bikes are concerned. But in the road out there, you've got a situation which is dangerous for the motorists. It's dangerous for people trying to get to bus stops. It's dangerous for the cyclists. A lot of the cyclists won't use that because they come in the motorway and they travel to abreast. So there's a whole lot of aspects that will have to be looked into. And the most significant one is that the council has to show a sympathetic attitude to the motorists in their design. And today, in my opinion, you have not done that.
Following this, with 2 short questions left.
Hi, I'll keep this quick then. I cycle into Glasgow quite often. I have a couple of issues with the cycle lane as it is at the moment along phase 1. Basically, cars do not look left if they're turning left. And that happens on every single junction. And the second one is a cycle lane that cycles both ways leads you to head-on collisions.
So based on phase 2,
based on phase 2, I would prefer they absolutely abolish phase 1, open the roads right back up the way it was.
Oh no,
Move back to having an open cycle lane each way, where cars gave the cyclists plenty of room to get
no, they
past.
didn't. How can you say GP when you don't cycle?
They did 3-4 years ago when I was cycling along.
Just for clarification for the audience, what option was that in the past? What was there in the past?
In the past option, the roads were still cycle lane, but much wider than they are now. There was a red painted line, although to segregate that, there is no reason why you couldn't put a car park either side. Now, to continue that into phase 2, there doesn't seem to be a suitable option when you join that two-way cycling into each of the junctions. Because what you end up doing is stopping the cyclists and the motorists for a longer period of time.
That's good talk there. Okay, go somewhere at the back. We haven't been there for a while. There's a lady in the middle, to your colleague. Okay, to the man in the blue shirt. Can we get a microphone quickly?
The paramedic chap talked about the chicanes in the existing phase 1 as being absolutely wonderful at reducing traffic speed. I'm a motorcyclist. Those chicanes are utterly lethal.
Yes, they are.
Good lighting conditions, there are concrete curves jutting out from all directions, and
What speed is he driving along?
looking through a motorcycle visor in rain and poor lighting, you cannot see it. Someday
Slow down.
Someday there is going to be a fatality because of those chicanes. Now, motorcyclists are officially classed as vulnerable road users. As I understand it, the council has a legal obligation to take account of all vulnerable road users. So what I would ask the council tonight is, what are you proposing? What are you going to do to take account of all vulnerable road users in your design of phase 2? And what are you going to do about the utterly lethal conditions that exist in phase 1?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and it's good to hear from different road users. Where you're highlighting that the curbs are an issue because you're not able to see that, that's something that, if you left your details, I'd be really keen to have more conversation with you and have a site visit and see if there is something we can do to highlight those curbs in more of a way that you're able to see it.
Chicane issue, which is the problem. And the design of the islands and the jut-outs from the curb. They are, another point, at the Kessington consultation, I spoke to the designer of phase 1, and he told me quite clearly that no account had been taken of motorcyclists in the design of phase 1. Now, to me, that is a dereliction of duty by the council, and something has to be done about it.
Well, we'll take that in action to look at phase 1, and I'd be keen to have further discussion with you about that, and we'll take that in action to look at that, but we'll also engage with you and all road users looking at phase 2 and make that commitment.
Okay, very last question from the gentleman there in the black t-shirt.
Thank you. I'll try and keep this very brief. I've commuted by cycle most of my life, and I usually go to Glasgow several times a week. My main concern is talking of phase 1 maintenance. If people are going to be encouraged to use the cycleway, it's imperative that it be cleared of debris. Now, I have emailed the council in the past and was assured once a week on a Thursday morning, I believe it was, that it would be cleared. Now, when we have storms, lots of timber, leaves fall over, there are often tin cans, broken glass there. All of these are considerable hazards to cyclists. And there's one point in particular when one is travelling south, before one gets to the Majestic Warehouse, there's a dip in the road where there is a severe lateral slope downwards to the left-hand side. Now, most days, the here, and that's full of mud. It's very slippery, and all cyclists will know if you're cycling, trying to cycle along laterally sloping
Hold the mic,
along a laterally sloping surface, it's potentially very dangerous. So, regardless of what scheme is adopted for phase 2, it's imperative that cycleways are cleared of debris, and this includes, in the winter, adequate salting, and just the build-up of grip actually adds to the hazards, so a lot of salt needs to be done to keep it clear. Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to thank everyone for their patience. This has been an outstanding, what I would call an outstanding level of patience in public meeting, and good contributions from every single person that stood up. So give yourself a round of applause.
Yeah, I think so.
And my last word is always the same, just have a good evening. Thank you very much.